Car Biker here in the back cave. I've got a whole heap of jobs to do on that there animal. It's time for a service again. I've got loads of little bits to do to it. Oil, filter, coolant, air filter, whole heap of other bits, bobs to check, and grease and oil and whatnot. And I thought, might as well show you a few of the jobs. If you've seen these jobs before, probably not going to get anything out of this. But there's a lot of people that I talk to who haven't done even the basic jobs themselves. And I thought it's worth having a quick video or two for those people, just so they can see how easy it is, because if this Muppet can do it, anybody can do it. So the first job today is oil and filter. This is what I'll be using today. So I've got my motor oil, 10W40. Obviously there's a lot of things that you need to get right on there. You need to make sure you're getting the right weight, the 10W40 bit. You need to make sure if it's synthetic, semi-synthetic. This is semi-synthetic, as the bike requires. And you need to make sure you got the right amount. Now I've definitely got the right amount because the bike needs under 3 litres if I recall correctly, but I will be checking that. I check it every time to make sure I use the right amount. And because I found a deal online, I've got 5 litres. So, and I've still got a bit left from last time, so that will be used for cleaning and things like that as well. So very good for cleaning is clean oil. And filter wise, I'm using a high flow filter, and that's the oil filter. In the case of Z1000, the HF303 is the one that does the job. Again, if you're doing this on your own bike, you need to check exactly which filter you should be using. Of course, you go on these websites. A lot of websites, I won't name any, but there's a lot of websites you can go on to. You can put in your registration number and it will list all of the parts for your bike, all of the fluids and maintenance bits and bobs, so you can find the right ones without having to think. And the only other thing I'll be using that isn't part of what you can see there is a replacement washer on the sump plug. So when I take the bolt out of the engine and let the oil out, it'll have a washer on, a crush washer made of copper. And I've got a whole box full of them, so I'll just pick the right one and replace that, and then that just gives you a perfect seal so that you don't leak oil. And then tools wise, I'll be using a spanner or two, a socket or two, and a ratchet or two. I'll also be using a torque wrench. If you're new to this, then using a torque wrench is a very good idea to make sure you don't over or under tighten anything. If you're not new to this, then I don't know why you're watching this video. But then, if you do know how things feel, you don't actually need to use a torque wrench. In many cases you can just tighten things up with a ratchet or a spanner by feel. Now the first bit of the job is to get the bike on a stand, and I'm going to get the bike outside because I'm a bit of a wuss. I like to have nice soft carpet under my feet when I'm in here, and I'm going to be chucking oil all over the place. So if I'm going to get oil anywhere, I'd rather it was on my driveway than on my carpet. Though with a bit of judicious use of cardboard, hopefully I won't get oil all over the driveway either, because Mrs. C will give me a slap. I like to put one of these on the brake lever, keep the front brake on when I'm lifting the bike onto a stand, just to stop the bike from moving. Mr. B says, "Ride invisible." So the next thing to do is just to run the engine for a few minutes. That'll warm it up, which makes the oil thinner, and then the oil will come out easier. So while that's warming up, here's a full set of tools. Big pan to catch the oil. That's big enough for a car, way bigger than you need for a motorbike. A lot of people use a kitty litter tray. 17mm spanner in this case to get the sump plug out. Ratchet and a 17mm for when it goes back on again. I've got this arrangement with, this is a socket for removing the oil filter, though you can generally do them by hand if they haven't been over tightened, or you can use a strap wrench, various other things. And in case anything's stuck, a persuader. Well, the engine's warmed up now. Oil will be nice and warm and should flow freely. So I'm going to pop off the sump plug and let the oil out. And one of the tricks I've learnt on this is a bit of pressure on the sump plug as you're undoing it. You might need a tap on a spanner with a hammer to get the thing to crack free in the first place, but once it's free and you're undoing it with your hand, just to push it towards the hole it's coming out of, just to stop the oil coming out once it's starting to get loose. And then when it's really loose, whip it away quick, let the oil out, and hopefully you don't get hot carcinogenic oil all over your hands, or in my case, gloves. And now we just wait for all the oil to come out. Depending on the configuration, you might need to move your pan around a little bit. Depends how big your pan is as well, of course. But it'll just take it a few minutes to drain all of that out. While it's draining, I'll clean up my sump plug and find a washer to fit. That's the old washer. Some people put them back on and you can get away with it, but it's not really worth it. And that one seems like the best fit. Remember, this is a crush washer, so it will actually deform once it's in there and the torque is applied. While your oil's coming out, got to keep an eye on it, blowing a bit in the wind there. You can see that little trail. I don't want that getting outside the pan. But it's a good idea to have a look at your oil. Make sure it's not gone all horrible. Make sure it's not full of bits of metal. There could be things going wrong inside the engine. And this stuff almost looks clear still. Well, the oil's now all drained out, just a couple of drips still coming, so it's time to put that back in the bike, so that when I put the new oil in it doesn't just flow straight out the bottom of the engine again. So I'm just going to pop that in, make sure it goes in nice and cleanly without any cross threads, and assuming it all can tighten up by hand, I'll then just nip it up with, well, I was going to say with a ratchet, but I'll nip it up with a torque wrench to do it correctly. These vary from bike to bike. On the Z1000, according to my manual, it's 29 Newton meters or 21 foot-pounds, but this could vary. My Yamaha was much more than that. So that's all the oil out and the sump plug back in, torqued up. Hopefully you could hear the click as it got to the right torque. Definitely don't start your engine at this point with no oil in if you are doing this job for the first time. Take your key out, probably the best bet. The next job is to replace the oil filter. I really must clean my exhaust pipes. This is a new oil filter, and the old one is buried right in there. Probably the easiest place to get a camera on it, but I think I can actually get to it without taking the belly pan off. We'll give it a try. For this I'll be using the oil filter wrench, or the oil filter socket I should say, with a simple ratchet. I think I can get it on there okay. without an extension. You just squeeze it behind the belly pan. The belly pan might have to come off at some point. Last time I did this I had the belly pan off already for another job, so that made it easier. This will be another messy job. It will pour oil, and depending on how your oil filter and engine configuration is, you might want to protect your exhausts. On other bikes, this one's quite easy because it just drops straight down and there's nothing in its path, but on other bikes I've had it where the oil, as it comes out the oil filter, because there'll be a good chunk in the oil filter, I've had that oil will spill all over the exhaust, or it'll go in a belly pan, or it'll go on some other part where you don't want it. In those cases it's worth putting an old towel or an old rag or something just to catch what comes out, or at least just to divert it so it doesn't get any parts that you want to keep nice and clean. Although you've just seen my header pipes, clearly mine are not clean anyway. Anyway, let's give this a try. That's my old filter. Take that to the tip later on. And there's a nice new filter. Now, there's a lot said on these things. The filter has got like a rubber O-ring around it, and you don't want that to snag when you're putting it into your engine, because if it snags it could twist up and then it could leak oil, so you could get an oil leak out of your filter, which would be bad. In the worst cases it could actually split the O-ring. So a lot of people will tell you to put a little bit of clean engine oil on your finger and just run it around that O-ring before you try and fit it. In reality, most of these filters, in fact every filter I've ever seen, so maybe others that don't do this, but every filter I've ever seen comes this little plastic dealie on there for a reason. It's not just so you can throw it straight in the sea and choke a dolphin. It's to keep the protection for the O-ring, which has already been greased. So in theory, you don't need to put any oil on there at all. If you want to, it's not going to hurt anybody. Unwrap that. You can see, hopefully on the camera, that's nice and shiny because it's already greased. And then all you do is you put this where the old one was and tighten it by hand at first, and if you want to, and depending on the instructions you'll find in your service manual or your owner's guide, you might want to torque it up as well. On the Z1000, Kawasaki do actually recommend you torque it to 17 Newton meters, which is quite a bit. I say quite a bit, I have to say that very carefully, because quite a bit maybe for a filter, but actually you'll find that that kind of tightness is much less than you would expect. Most of the problems that you'll find from doing these kind of jobs are over tightening things. That's hand tight. To give you an idea of just how not tight this is, I'm actually having to switch to my tiny torque wrench. So, 17. And normally I'd just do this by hand, but you know, doing a video I should do it properly, shouldn't I? 15. 17 Newton meters. That's 17, not very tight at all. Well, I've now got a bike with no oil, but it's got its sump plug fitted, it's got its oil filter fitted, so I should now be able to put oil in without any oil falling out. Now, you should always check your manual. Earlier in the video I think I said I only need just under 3 litres, but actually it's 3.8 litres I need. Under 3 litres must have been for the Honda. So 3.8 litres needed. Double check as well if you're doing this job. Sometimes you might just change the oil and not the filter. To be honest, the filters cost a £5, so I always change them. But if you don't change the filter, as you saw, the filter holds some oil, so you'll actually put a little bit less in. The way I do this, I always pour it into a jug first to measure it. I don't believe the jug is necessarily right, but because I want 3.8 litres in, I'm going to put 3.5 litres in, maybe 3.6. And once I've done that, I'll then look at the sight glass and start checking it, run up the engine, make sure that the oil's in the right place, and fine tune it afterwards. Another tip, never fill your jug right to the top. I've always found putting oil into an engine always ends up messy, and the more oil you've got in your jug, the more mess you're likely to create. And take the little cap out. So I'm going to do 500ml at a time, and I'll do that 7 times, and then I'll start fine tuning. Now I've got 3 1/4 litres in, so I'm getting near the end, and the oil's starting to appear in the sight glass now. Just be able to see that at the bottom there. The sight glass isn't going to be particularly accurate at the minute though, because the bike isn't necessarily upright, because my driver's got a bit of a fall on it, so I'll be turning the bike around before I fine tune at the end. Well, I've now got the bike as level as it's going to get, so I'll just put a little bit more oil in. It's got 3.5 litres in it now. I've got another 300 in the jug, so if I use all of that I've used the full 3.8, but we'll go by the sight glass. I've got the oil pretty much where I want it. What I'm going to do now is just put the oil cap, filler cap back on, and then start the engine up. Let it warm up a bit, and then I'll check the oil again just to make sure everything looks okay. One thing Kawasaki recommend is, well, they actually recommend that you replace this O-ring. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that O-ring, so all I'm going to do is what they suggest you do with a new O-ring, which is put a bit of grease on it. Again, it's a rubber part. It's been having something threaded screwed up against it, so you don't want it to snag and split. So a little bit of grease, just to keep it nice. I'll pop that back on and get the bike going. Now if you're like me, you'll have dribbled oil everywhere and that'll now be dripping. So I'm going to go and wipe away all the oil that I've dribbled, and I'm also going to wipe clean the sump plug and the oil filter just to make sure there's nothing on there. And then once I've taken it for a ride later on, I can just check if it's getting any moisture there. I just run a finger over and feel it for any oil on either the sump plug or the oil filter, just to make sure there's no leaks. That's the entire job done, apart from one last thing, which is, with the help of my lovely assistant Mrs. C, is to put the old oil into an old bottle and take that old bottle to the tip, because you can't just throw this stuff away. It's horrible. The cat fall over. Well, that's the job done. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully, if you've not done it before, it might have given you a bit of confidence to go and try it yourself. I say it is a dead easy job, probably one of the easiest. So all that's left for me to do is tidy up a bit, get this to the tip, say thank you for watching, ride safe, and I'll talk to you all again soon.